Hello fellow gamers, this is Tim, SamY7, and I want to talk to you about the midnight setting. See that right there? This is the 3.5 version of the setting, and there is a third version, third edition D&D version of the setting. I got these real cheap. I got two of them. I figured I'd have one for myself and one for my players, if I ever ran it again. I've never actually ran the D20 version of this, even though that would probably be the easiest. I'm not known to do things that are easy, though. I like to do things that are usually kind of difficult, and I like to tinker. So I've actually translated this setting into two different RPGs. I translated it to the high adventure role-playing, which is HARP, which I reviewed before, and I've also done this in a Rules Light World of Darkness way, sort of using the Dark Ages lines as inspiration for how I should do things. And I think when I did that version of the World of Darkness, I actually had more combat skills, because it was a more combat-heavy game. And I did some things with that, but that's not really what I want to talk about. The setting itself. What's in the setting? What makes it interesting? I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan. If you hadn't figured that out by the Samwise in my in my name, and or the the toys back here. And for Tetsubo, I figured out how to have it so that the words aren't backwards. So that should appease your tastes. It was kind of annoying me too. So, but anyway, the midnight setting. It's sort of like Lord of the Rings. If Sauron took over and ate all the halflings, well, not ate all the halflings, but he sort of took over things and just beat the world to a bloody pulp. And the characters are supposed to play sort of freedom fighters that are sort of doomed heroes fighting on the edges of society and just basically trying to survive. I don't know. I kind of like grim settings. I'm not a very up person, so I kind of like playing in some very depressing settings. And midnight for me, I mean, it has that despair in it. It has that sort of edge that I like. And not all my players always appreciated that. It's also a very, very poor system, or poor setting as far as equipment goes. And there's actually no monetary system at all. It's down to bartering. And there's some interesting mechanics in here for how you're supposed to barter. And, like, for instance, if you're in a wooded area, wood really isn't going to be valued that much. But if you go to the mountains, then there isn't as much, so maybe it's worth more there. Or there's certain items that are, worth more in different areas, but there is no monetary system really, so it's all bartering. But as far as the midnight setting goes, okay, there's this big map, and there's like a front on the side and a front over here, and all this stuff in the middle has kind of been taken over. And it's basically in the front book. The map's kind of pretty. Orcs are from the north, and they're kind of coming down. And there are human legates. Legates are sort of priests. And they are the only divine spellcasters that exist. All of the other gods have been sort of severed off from the plane, the mortal plane. And the only god that kind of fell to earth is Isrador. And he's sort of like Sauron. He's just this badass evil thing, he's sort of like, I don't know, he's basically just an evil deity. And the orcs are his babies. He has created them, he's filled them, and I think he corrupted them actually in this setting. And they're sort of his messengers in the world. The legates are his priests, however, and most legates are humans. And humans sort of dominate the setting, because it's illegal to be an elf, it's illegal to be a dwarf, it's illegal to be a halfling. And there's all these other half races in here as well, which I was very intrigued by. That's the one thing I liked about HARP, is that you could have half races, and this actually has sort of delineated half races that sort of tell you what they all do. Obviously, it's not as flexible as HARP, but as far as races go, but you'll have that. As far as what the races are, There's 3 races of humans: Dorns, Sarkosans, and Aaronlanders. And Aaronlanders are in the center. There's 4 races of elves: Karensil, the Danasil, the Arunsil, and Miransil, if I pronounce those right. There's gnomes, which have an interesting part in the setting. They kind of travel on the rivers, and they're less like the gnomes of other fantasy games. They are one of the free races that aren't humans. They're allowed to travel, and they kind of have to move the orc troops around as well. And they kind of toe the line between trader and free, and they're kind of like they're an interesting sort of race in the setting. There's halflings and of course orcs, and here's the half-breeds. There's Duero, there's dwarves, and there's elflings. And the Duero are gnomes and dwarves. The dwarves are orcs and dwarves, and elflings are elves and halflings. At least I think so. It's been a while. I haven't played this in a little bit. And the neat thing about this for the D20 system is there's a thing called heroic paths. And the heroic paths, you can take the healer heroic path, for instance. And that's completely separate from whatever class you want to be. So you can be a fighter and take the healer heroic class and basically just have a lot of healing spells, and you get them by level. So it goes from 1 to 20, and at certain levels you get different benefits. But there are lots of heroic paths in here. And some of them seem maybe a little bit more stronger than others, and depending on how you run a game, just watch out for that. There's some prestige classes, like any other D20 game. I'm not really a big fan of prestige classes, so I normally ignore them. But they do have a nice flavor for the midnight game. There's different things. There's all kinds of information on the legates and Isildur and what he's actually trying to do. He's trying to get back into the, I guess, the heavens. And he has these... he's just basically sucking the magic out of the world to empower himself. And he has a lot of humans that have kind of stepped up, and they now worship him in the form of legates and just normal worshippers. But the list of things that are illegal is pretty harsh. like literacy is bad, travel is bad. Just if you kill on sight all the dwarves, elves, and halflings, and I mean it's pretty bleak. I like the whole flavor of the setting. It's interesting. I know Fantasy Flight put out a short movie about the midnight setting. I haven't actually seen it. I think it's called Midnight Chronicles, and I eventually want to get my hands on that. We'll see if I can get the funds together to do that. I don't think it's that expensive, but it'd be interesting to see. And the legates have asterisks. I think that's Asterax. I think that's how you pronounce it. Which are basically sort of like demonic possessing spirits that possess animals, and they sniff out magic users. And oh yeah, by the way, magic is illegal, along with just about everything else. And these Asterax with the legate masters hunt down and kill magic users. So there's definitely a witch hunt thing going on. And just the idea of being able to smell magic is kind of an interesting idea for me. And I think they might just sense it in some ways, but I always thought smelling magic for me in my games was interesting. They've reduced the number of core classes, and they have their own core classes. The Channeler, which is sort of the magic user. Defender, sort of like a monk. Fighter, rogue, and wildlander. And the wildlander is sort of a rogue. Or not a rogue, I'm sorry, a ranger. And those are basically the core classes. And they go through and tell you how, ways to run a midnight game. They go through the different places in their cities. And, the elven nations on the one side of the map, there's basically just a line they're fighting, and then the dwarves fight on the other side, and the humans are in the center, essentially. And the orcs are up north, and they're coming south. But it's a great setting. Check it out. It's grim and fun.